In this appropriate time, I'd like to call the July Park and Rec meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge.
The flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any changes to the agenda, Ginger?
Nope.
Make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Motion was made by Bernie and second by John. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And I look for approval of the June 3rd meeting minutes.
Move to approve the minutes. Second.
Made by John, second by John. Yeah, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes approved. Public comment? No public comment. Okay, Ginger, approval and recommend to council amendment to agreement with Aries.
All right, so when we completed the trail section, Craig Shue from Ayers and myself and a couple DNR staff walked the area where the proposed bridge would be, had some conversations and came to the conclusion that we want to proceed and just go ahead with 30% of an engineering and design. So I had brought to council capital some funding for that. And so we're ready now with an amendment to the initial agreement that did have conversation on the bridge in that agreement. So this is an amendment to that existing trail agreement with Ayers, just to clarify. So I do have Craig here and he's gonna go through that for us, and then would like to look for some discussion and go from there. So I introduced, and you may remember, you can have a seat over here, Craig. Craig from years past, I don't know, it's probably been 2 years since he's been here. So yeah.
Good evening, thank you. If everybody remembers, we were putting together concept plans many years ago. The first process was walking the trail with Chad and another one of my engineers when he was still Parks Director. It has evolved to when it got constructed in 2022, I believe it was, fall of 2022.
Yep.
That was with CDBG closed dollars. It was funds that were part of the state revolving loan program that were used, allocated by the county, by Outagamie County, to that trail. There was some issues with the bridge at that time. You have a very large floodplain in that area that encompasses the Embarrass River there. So those closed dollar funds that were obligated to the project had sunset dates to be used by, and to work through all the regulatory issues that structure replacement or installation and design efforts would have held that up, and you would not have been able to use those funds. So the bridge was removed from the design efforts at that point in time when we pushed forward to use those funds and construct as much of the trail as what you have today. Now, after that walkthrough with the DNR, conversations with your Parks Director, it was decided to go through 30% design efforts, see how much of that structure affects the floodplain upstream. When we did initial analysis, hydraulics evaluations of the floodplain, any filling of the floodplain where we were proposing to cross into Pfeiffer Park was raising the floodplain upstream, even with the railroad structure that's directly upstream of that. So it was decided, no go right now, let's just get done what we can get done. Now we're revisiting it. We want to see how much we can minimize that rise upstream, see what structures and what owners it affects, and then bring that back in a report and show you as a committee and as a council, if desired, to see what the next steps would be. If it's feasible to move forward with that further on from 30% design. I know that's kind of really high level, but I'm open to ask, any questions you have. I'm not a hydraulics engineer, but I know with that floodplain, you're modeling that floodplain upstream. You're coordinating with FEMA, you're coordinating with the county. We need to talk to the snowmobile club again, because they really have that desire to cross at that location. So the structure has to be large enough for them to get across it. Probably not with their grooming device, because that's a very large tractor that they groom with, but to at least get the snowmobiles across so that they have connectivity through the city. So that's what our preliminary design is. So it's hydraulic modeling, and then conceptual engineering, selecting a couple alternatives for the bridge that would cross, seeing what it would take to move it forward beyond the 30%. Because at this point in time, there's a lot of variables. So we want to just start this, eliminate some of those variables, and then continue to move forward in a slow process.
Where were they thinking of putting the bridge across?
So it would have been, if you come down River Road, you cross the railroad tracks, it would be where the narrowest portion of the embarrass is to go into the park. So it would pretty close to, where Chad is identifying it.
About where the chiropractor is,
Pardon me?
about where you're going into Pfeiffer Park.
Yes, yeah, correct. Yep. Yeah, that's the shortest span that we can do there, is in that general location. Coming off the old River Road corridor, did have a bridge many years ago crossing over to Wapaka Street. That has obviously been eliminated for many years, but that is still owned by the city, that corridor there. So we'd be crossing from city-owned property that's dedicated right where it says River Road to Pfeiffer Park's parking lot area there. That's what we're proposing. And we'd be redoing plan and profiles, picking a bridge alternative, putting that bridge into our plan and profiles, and then doing the hydraulic modeling of the floodplain maps that have been created through the years by FEMA.
Is there a height that the bridge has to be above the river to allow boats underneath it?
Well, so yes, we would be trying to look for a chord height too, so that there's navigability with kayakers, and if somebody really wants to take a small boat down that river, they can as well. So we have to make sure that we're high enough above the normal operating, normal water levels, so that they can get underneath that as well. Yeah, we take all those things into account as we look at that.
It's going into Pfeiffer Park. You're gonna allow snowmobiles to take this bridge? That one I don't understand.
That's already a designated part of the snowmobile. It's a drop-off zone, they call it, that parking lot. It's no longer used because there is real no access, but the parking lot has always been, if you look at a snowmobile map, there's always a star on it that says designated drop-off zone.
So they would
So they
use
can-
that parking
They
lot.
can park there, get on the trail and go on
Okay.
the platform,
That makes
Yeah.
sense, 'cause I was
or
afraid
come
of
into
bridges.
town and hang out, yeah.
They have gone through Pfeiffer Park through here, if you guys remember in the past, and then crossed here, and then they've gone somewhere to the north.
They can go to Quick Trip to fill up with gas. It's illegal, whatever.
They do got a trail just over the railroad tracks. That's that little house out here that goes through the woods.
Yes, yeah, you can see it. I think you're in an area.
Anybody else have any questions for him?
Once we get the engineering done,
what's it gonna cost to do a bridge? How are we gonna pay for a bridge?
So that is, so right now, for us to put an estimate together, we're at a 10,000 elevation. So this 30% starts eliminating some of those questions and assumptions that we need to make. So that is a great question, and as part of this, we do have, we'll put a memo together with a preliminary cost estimate. And, it's pretty easy for us to identify some funding sources right away for you. There's stewardship grants and there's, private entities, there's sponsorships. All those can be, we can put something in the memo kind of identifying that, but you're going to need this to start applying for some of these grants. So
And
it's a baby step in this whole process.
correct, and this project, like, we could talk about the same amount of money for a rec center or something like that. And there would be no state funding, there would be no DNR funding, there would be no grants. This is a very welcoming, very possible opportunity for many grants. So it's definitely not gonna be all tax-based funded.
I just remember when we did have that $800,000 grant for the trail, we still had to pay $156,000
Yep.
to get that 800,000.
There's always, typically, you're gonna find 50 to 75% grant matches.
I'm sure a bridge is probably gonna be $1 million. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
still gonna be writing a check for
And
$250,000.
well, that's when you go to your private funding and you do some fundraising, you get the thermometer out and watch it raise, whatever you can do. I know the snowmobile club is vested in it. And they have funding through their sources as well.
They've been talking about this bridge for quite a while.
Right, yeah,
Tom Hunchke's been at some meetings a couple of years back, and I know they've been
they've
looking to
saved,
put money into it too, so I
Yeah.
don't, maybe this is our grant writer can be a big help for us too, on a project like.
20% of this cost is going to be paid for through Wapaka County grant through the Greenways Committee. So that's a different type of application too.
I'd just like to mention too, there's a lot of different types of bridges. I went to school in Stevens Point. And right away you think big concrete bridge. If you get out this summer and you wanna see a really neat little park, Jordan Park right off of Highway 66. Just east of Stevens Point. There's a perfect example of a bridge that crosses, I don't know, tomorrow, or I don't know what river it is,
Probably
but
the Charles River.
Clover River or something, but it's a metal structure. It's got an arch and it's basically got, a wood decking. And there's, obviously it's chewed up a little from snowmobiles crossing it, but it's a very important bridge for snowmobile traffic.
Mhm.
But anyway, there's a lot of different bridge structures.
Yeah, the structure you're referring to, so if you go to, it would typically be a prefabricated structure. It will not be a cast in place style structure. You'd be, doing either some type of a pile system for the abutments to be on. Either they'd be screw in style piles so that you can get a bearing capacity, or they would be pounded in place. You'd pour an abutment on top of that, and then the bridge would be set inside of it. So if you go to Wheeler, WHEELER, they're a manufacturer of prefabricated structures. They have a really nice website that shows some of those pictures. If you're in Green Bay, which is a little closer than probably the Stevens Point one, the Green Isle Park has a bridge that crosses. It's a pedestrian style bridge, very similar to what you potentially be looking at, that crosses the East River between the Village of Alloway and the Village of Bellevue's trail on the East River. So things like that is what you're looking at. They do use those on snowmobile trails up north, all over the place, as well, so.
And I'm kind of hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, that in order to even know what kind of a dollar amount we would be looking at, this has to be done anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I can throw a dart at the wall right now and say it's gonna be $1 million, but until we start really diving into the requirements of the DNR, what the snowmobile club really wants to see, what this is a state trail that this is on, so we have to do coordination with DNR and DOT because of
Okay.
this state trail. And you're not working with just, Northeast region in Green Bay, you're working with North Central region, so we're working with staff out of Wisconsin Rapids from the DOT. So there's all those things that have to come into play here as we really start this again. And we start eliminating some of those unknowns, and some of the requirements that are gonna be needed, and that's when we can start tightening our cost estimate down. And then
Okay.
figure out what today's cost would be, and then put inflationary costs on it, because every year you don't do it, everybody knows that prices go up. So we try to help you budget that way.
Thank you.
We just had that meeting last night and nobody brought up this walking trail. They want new tennis courts, they want new bathrooms at
Well, I heard
Memorial.
bridge. We heard
um,
bridge in our group.
This is a small amount of people that would use this when there's our parks are going, our tennis courts are just total junk. I mean, we only have so much money to do so many projects. This is like, hey, we'll spend a little bit of money and then we'll spend a lot of money on this trail. There's only so much money to go around. I just think this is, instead of bringing in new stuff, let's fix what we have. So I just feel like this is gonna be a money pit.
I just wanted to say that the bridge was brought up on both platforms last night. Not agreeing or disagreeing with what you said, it just that it was on a sticky note.
Yeah, I did see it, heard it as well. My question about this approve and recommend to council the amendment to the agreement, to do the 30% design, there's no dollar amount on here. What are we looking at for this?
So the agreement is in your packet and it has these two amounts on it.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. I guess I did see those. I didn't connect the dots. Thank you.
I think it's a good idea because all the time and effort that went into the Newton Blackmore Trail would be a shame to have it end right here.
I grew up on a state trail, on a Rails to Trails state trail, and my sister owned a very successful restaurant that she made a lot of money at, enough to retire at 50 years old. So I can vouch personally for the thought of bringing the commerce into town from a state trail possibility.
Anybody else have any other comments?
Just looking at the amount of money that we would spend on to find out, I think it's worth finding out. Otherwise, we're just gonna sit here in perpetuity going, are we gonna do something or not? At least this way, we have a little bit more of a game plan and we'll know a little bit better what the dollar amounts would be and whether or not we could afford it at that point in time.
I feel like we got to this point the last time and the DNR said, you're in a 100-year floodplain, you can't put one in. And then all of a sudden, 2
No,
years
we
later,
didn't.
you guys are bringing it up again.
We did not get to this point. We didn't do a floodplain hydraulic model at all. We just had preliminary meetings, so.
The DNR's recommendation is they wanted to run alongside of the railroad tracks with the trail and that. They took one look at it, what it was, what it's gonna cost them. They kind of changed their idea.
And after that, Craig and I met with Waterways, with Scott Kinky, Chad, I think you were in that conversation as well, and he didn't see a problem with the permitting of the proposed plan, and neither did the floodways engineer with the DNR, so.
Any other comments? I'll look for a motion to approve and recommend to council. Agreement with Aries.
I'll make a motion to approve the amendment with Harry's and Associates for 30% design and engineering of the new Blackmore Bridge.
Second.
Made a second. Yeah. Motion was made by John Shea and second by John Hass. All in favor? Any more comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, Ginger, approve and recommend to council.
Thank you, Craig.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this is kind of why Robert has stuck around as well, so he's available for questioning, but we were able to put the two contracts in together, for a total, just, it was a cost savings, to bring in contractors that would be doing the exact same work, to two different locations. The one is the Wolf River Avenue parking lot, which we call a courtesy lot, and then the North Street resurfacing project. So, two bids were received, and, based on those, we would recommend Northeast Asphalt. If anybody has any questions on that? Or both?
That includes a trail too, right?
Yes, yep, and it includes the, surfacing, the concrete surfacing from the Waters to Johns
And the one dock.
on the dock. That's not included in this, that's equipment, and that's just an outright. Yep,
Are there plans to continue the asphalt all the way to the sculpture park?
yes, yep, you'll see that in probably the 2026.
Anybody have any other questions? I'd look for a motion to approve and recommend to council the contract at Northeast Asphalt.
I'll make that motion.
I'll make a motion to approve and recommend Northeast Asphalt for the Wolf River Courtesy Parking Lot in North.
Second.
Made the second. Bernie made a motion, so you got it. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
That you should see construction starting on July 21st.
July 21st.
Yes,
We have some more talking to do about that yet with the parking issues, right?
what's that?
Once that parking lot is built. Like with the
Yeah,
school
then
board.
we will have to go ahead and, talk about permit parking.
Yep.
Yep,
Okay. Thanks.
yep.
Consider and recommend a resolution authorizing the submittal of an application. Ginger?
Here I'm just asking to, submit an application. The DNR has a grant for the exact purpose of developing an archery range, so I thought I'd give it a shot. So it's something that you have directed me to do. The grant is a $5,000 minimum. Right now, we're just about at that, so I have Luke going back to his drawing board and making sure that it's ADA accessible and things like that, getting his final numbers in. But it would be no more than, I think $7,000 with a 75% DNR contribution, so the city would be, potentially paying, whatever that difference would be, 25%.
The Boy Scouts were looking to do something there also?
Yeah, yep, so also along with that, we've had a young gentleman that the mayor sent to us, he is interested in, doing like a bow stands or something that is movable, because he turns 18 this summer, or maybe in the winter. He turns 18 within the time period that we wouldn't receive funding through the grant for. So he wants to do something that is movable, that we can store until we're ready to place on the actual property. So he'll be presenting that hopefully at the next meeting. And this isn't us saying that we have, we're spending any money right now. This is just an application process. The timeline is a 2 to 3 year award timeline because it is federal funding. So they do go through it a little bit more. The DNR staff that I'm working with on this one, she said that our proposed project would probably only take 2 years, like the minimum, just because it's so simple.
Anybody got any other comments on it? Look for a motion to consider and recommend the resolution authorizing the submittal of the application towards a Wisconsin DNR grant for the purpose of developing an archery range.
I make a motion to authorize submittal for the application towards a Wisconsin DNR grant for the purpose of developing an archery range at 740 River Road near the dog park.
Second.
Bernie, you make second? Motion made by John, second by Bernie. Any other discussion?
Is there any application fee?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Updates, Ginger.
So currently we're doing budget work, whether it's research on fees or, on wage studies. Chris and I have both been doing fee studies for different facility rentals. We've seen a lot of damage and extra cleanup in the parks right now. So we're researching how many communities do deposits that are fully refundable if they clean up after themselves, and then if they don't, you get, kind of a fee. We'd bring that to council, obviously, with our fee schedule. So that'll be on an agenda item eventually. Staff is continuing to try to keep up with all the weeds, the mowing, the heat and humidity is only making everything grow faster. And I guess we're working through the tree inventory, so you may see somebody looking up at the trees in your terraces. That is our arborist. She is going to be working with Luke and myself in the next couple weeks to do some of the bigger parks. I received a grant through a foundation that Christine Cross from the museum had placed my way for a sign for Hatton Park. So my next step is to order that sign. I did get the unfortunate news today that it's a 12 to 16 week lead time on the sign. So we may not see that sign for a while, but it's paid for in full by this foundation, which is really cool. I know that some of you last night came to the East Central Wisconsin Planning Commission's core public input session last night. You may have heard me several times say that's on the Spark application. So I did get that submitted to them, looking at St. John's and the Berniger River Trailhead, which is Lost Park, and then the two properties in between on Pearl Street of Longevity and Wolf River Pub. So those are the things I've been working on. Go through staff recognition. First of all, I have a typo there. It's the anniversaries for July. Connor has been with the city for 3 years today. He has a great eye for landscaping. My next project for him is right in front of the building here, to redesign that area so that we can actually get out of our new emergency exit, because there's bushes in front of it right now. And then, as Robert mentioned, Luke Hammonds, he is the leader of the Streets and Parks crews. He has so many hats that he wears, and this is the time of year where he loses the most hair, I think. So just want to thank those guys along with the rest of my crew, because it is Parks and Recreation Month. I will be sending out an invite for our picnic that will be at the end of the month, so down at Hatton Park. And that's about it.
The Eagle Scout presentation,
Yeah, hopefully.
the next month.
Yeah, we met with him and he's really excited about it and needs to get started on it as well, so.
Anybody else got anything else? Review our next meeting date, Tuesday, August 5th.
So August 5th is National Night Out. We have did meetings that night, sometimes we don't. It's up to you guys and what you wanna do. It is here on campus again, so.
What
I
about, what
think
about
it's-
doubling up with these guys on Monday?
That's fine
Would
with
you
me.
like that?
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
see a reason why that wouldn't work.
Otherwise, it's a pretty busy place down here.
It gets a little loud and
Nowhere
rowdy.
to park.
Yeah, and there's nowhere to park.
Well, but nobody has any objections, then we'll piggyback then with Public Works again.
Sure.
Are we in favor of that 5:15 start too? First to 5 with a double?
5:15 is fine.
Caveat.
I'll
So-
have to check my schedule.
Okay, I have been pre-selected for a jury trial. It starts July 14th. If I'm chosen, I believe that will start almost immediately after that, and they say that it's a 6-week potential trial. So I don't know what my capacity will be at that time. I am currently working on disseminating some of my duties to other staff in the building and throughout the department, but just so you guys know, you may come here and not see me for 6 weeks.
I have that meeting.
Do you? I'll see you there. So, okay, so, yeah, that's all.
Before we go, and I should have mentioned this earlier, I think, when the survey, the
Yeah.
park survey is being kept open. It was
Yes.
supposed to close today, it's being kept open. So if you haven't, or if people you know haven't yet, go out and do the park survey.
Thank you.
And Ginger, where can they access that information?
Ooh, it's on our website. There's a QR code, and Chris has it laid out. It's the court. So, if you go to the Park and Rec website, it's right on the main page.
Seeing nothing else, I'd make a motion for adjournment.
On the left. Yep.
Oh,
Yep, there you go.
beautiful.
I'll make a motion adjourned.
Second.
Motion made by Bernie, seconded by John Hack. All in favor?